Everybody, it is 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, and this is Beaver Politics, Indigenous Matters. I'm your host, Trudy Six Birder. Tonight we're going to talk about just some of the current political climate here in Canada and the comments made by the leader of the opposition, Pierre Poilievre, with regards to his commitment to sharing tax revenues realized by resource development in Canada. And I want to remind everybody that we follow the 7 sacred teachings in this discussion. We treat each other and ourselves with honesty, respect, wisdom, love, humility, courage, and truth. We take turns. Everybody gets a chance to talk. And then when you're finished, we'll move it on to the next one and then the next one, and then we can have some engagement. But again, I like to make sure that we all have an opportunity to talk. We don't talk over one another. Everybody's welcome to join the conversation. So my take on what I heard, thank you, Curtis, for sending me that video. I felt, first thing I noticed was Pierre Poilievre could not spit the word out, territories. He could not say, "I thank you for having me in your territory." He stumbled on that, and he said your ancestral lands, which I know can mean the same thing, but it's a little softer. It's not as assertive and as firm as saying this is our territory, right? Ancestral implies previously. So I saw him struggle with saying those words. And I just, if you're going to share with us on revenues for resource development, I want to know what your commitment is to rectify the past and how much revenue's been realized already. We all know how much money's been made in the forestry sector in this country since the establishment of Canada, in the oil and gas sector in Alberta since the 1950s, and then into Saskatchewan when it started to become a thing there. Hydro in BC, Manitoba, Ontario, the fisheries on the coasts, all 3 coasts. Mining that's happened, all of it, gravel, sand and gravel, every single thing that's ever come out of the ground should be shared with us going back to the establishment of this country. That's how I feel about it. So I feel like it's a slippery slope because he only spoke about the economics and sharing development. And he continues to say so that we can pay for our own things. And what I'm afraid that what he means by all of that, which I'm not opposed to us paying for our way when we're all in a good place to do that. We're not all in that good place. All of our communities are in various states of healing. Some of us are still really struggling. We have different levels of wealth in different nations across the country, different experiences with regards to proximity to urban centers. If you're surrounded by agriculture, if you're surrounded by oil and gas, or maybe you're a remote community and you still live off the land and speak your language, and you don't get into urban centers very much. So it doesn't fit everybody, and I'm afraid that he's trying to get out of the fiduciary obligation that is owed to First Nations in this country. And that's all of those treaty promises, plus because of the way they wrote the Indian Act and the way that they dishonored the treaties that they signed with us, there's a lot of reparations to be made. And I don't think it's going to happen in just sharing revenues or tax revenues with us going forward, and then forcing First Nations into paying for everything on their own. We need to first get into a standard of living that's equal to what the communities off reserve in our area, so to parity with other Canadians. And we're still living sadly, lower standards. We sometimes have 15 to 20 people in a 3-bedroom home. That's not parity. Our roads are underdeveloped and not maintained. Some of those nations, even in Treaty 6 territory in Alberta that are close to urban centers, reserve roads were just trails that they just started to make into roads. They've never been engineered or properly designed. A lot of times we don't have the equipment or the gravel to maintain roads properly, all of those types of things. A library. This was brought to my attention that somebody had thought that every First Nation has a library. I've never seen a First Nation with a library. Like maybe sometimes in associated with a little museum, they'll have some collection of books or in the school. But does everybody in the nation access the school? And, do we have gyms? Do we have all that same standard of living off reserve? And until we get there, I don't think that's the only thing that should be offered to us. We need, that's from my opinion, my position, and what I've seen in the 28 years I've been working in all of this. Um, it's a good start, but I don't think it's going to solve the problems. But that's how I feel about it. And I'd like to hear what you have to say about that, Curtis. Are you there, Curtis?
Thank you.
Yeah.
I was just doing something there where I was just getting somebody some pop. But great. I totally agree with all your comments and everything. And yes, our ancestral, we need reparations like for all of the trillions of dollars that have been taken over our territories. And I think that's happening with the Huron Robinson. They're getting their back pay for, that $5 that got into the billions. And I think the treaties in Alberta, Treaty 6 and Treaty 8, some First Nations are working on getting some of those reparations. And that'll be a huge settlement once it's done. But that's just the increase of what they've been taking out of our lands. And it could be in the trillions or billions. I know they were offered a certain amount and they didn't. They rejected and they're going for more. And so Canada's offering some First Nations already settlement agreements with that, that $5 or $4 for the treaty payment. And they're offering, I've heard, like different amounts for different First Nations. Like a lot of these are secret behind the negotiations between First Nations, so we don't know a lot of details. That's how a lot of these settlements go. Like they come to us because we're impoverished, and they'll say, "Hey, we'll give you 50 grand each. Sign away your cows and plows. Here, sign away this. Here, sign away that. And it's always like that, eh? And resource sharing, if we from the very beginning, if we had resource revenue sharing from the very beginning, we'd be richer than the Saudis Arabians. We'd have more oil and more money than maybe the richest people on earth. The trillions that they've taken out of this country, the amount of wealth, and yet our people are living in a lot of people are living in poverty, and not every First Nation has access to resources like oil, gas, diamonds. A lot of some of our nations don't have any natural like resources that are worth millions of dollars, and some have billions of dollars in revenues. Look at northern Alberta; it's the economic hub of the world, and that's our traditional territories of my people. So my lands are rich in resources, like billions of dollars. I'm not even exaggerating, and resources. So yeah, it's a little rant of mine. Hear you? Um,
Sorry, I didn't. I muted because I was coughing. Sorry. I was saying I totally agree with you, and I wished and I think a lot of us wish in hindsight they've been sharing that with us all along. But I feel like sometimes we're still have to remember that when we take that opportunity, there's always something that we're giving up. And it's been language, culture, way of life, our healthy environment, clean water, clean air. We're giving those things up for this sometimes. I feel because I've been working in the resource development and environmental protection sector for 28 years now. So to me, I'm not opposed to resource development, but I am opposed to the rate at which it's happening without cleaning things up as well. Because we can have that kind of wealth and our culture and our way of life and our language at the same time. But they're taking all of that other stuff away from us to access those resources and not giving any of that other back that's so connected to land. But let's hear what Calvin has to say.
Well, you got to remember that money doesn't last forever. So if we take those agreements, we take those deals, are you going to be able to look your children in the eye and say, I'm sorry, I took the dollar. I'm sorry, you have no treaties anymore. You have no land anymore. You have no resources anymore. But I got to go on vacation. You know, If it's too good to be true, it probably is. I've studied the global markets, this is just a hobby of mine. I follow conflicts around the world. I follow droughts. I follow geopolitical events all over the world. I follow politics in the United States. And Canada was always boring, so I never followed it. To be honest, Um, but I've followed the United States politics since I was, 16 years old. So I know all the politicians there, and I know all the tactics. I know who's in, who's out. And so when I saw patterns happening there, that I saw patterns happening in Hungary, it kind of set off some alarm bells. But I followed and I made predictions, and every predictions that I made happened that was going to happen in the US. It has happened in the US. What caused me to start
Boom.
following politics in Canada was Pierre Poilievre. I found myself cheering on this man, and I was like, what the hell? He's saying the exact same things as Donald Trump is saying in the United States. And I dug in deeper. He is part of the same organization that Elon Musk, Pierre Poilievre, Tim Houston, Doug Ford, and all the other premiers that are conservatives to this organization. And this organization isn't good. It's all about the almighty dollar, and they will do anything to roll you over just for that dollar. So, with that being said, Pierre Poilievre will promise you the world, just like Donald Trump was promising all the Americans he was going to get rid of taxes. He's going to lower inflation. He's going to make America great again. You guys are all going to be rich. That's the exact same tactic he's using. And it's the exact same tactic the government uses on our poor, well, I don't want to say uneducated, but, well, a lot of the time our leaders are, uneducated, and they run our communities. And so when they see the almighty dollar being introduced to them, they see short-term gains. They only see 4 years. They only see their reelection. They don't think about our grandchildren. They don't think about their grandchildren and the future generations. They're short-sighted. They only want to come in the next election, which is absolutely ridiculous. And I think it's negating their fiduciary responsibility to be First Nation leaders. And it's a disgrace. But every First Nation leader should put future generations first and foremost on any decisions that they make. Yeah. So Pierre Poilievre throwing his dollars in front of our face, that's what's going to happen. We are going to bring this man in. And once this man comes in, this is what he's going to do. He's going to replace Supreme Court judges that were in favor of Supreme Court decisions that were in favor of our treaties, whatever it's Treaty 6, 9, our Mi'kmaq treaties. And a lot of people say he can't do that. Yes, he can. If he comes in with a majority party, the majority can take out the Supreme Court judge, and who gets to appoint the next Supreme Court judge, which is him, Pierre Poilievre. So once he does that, basically all of the decisions the Supreme Court has decided in favor of First Nations will be appealed and fought in court. Well, all of that is going on. That might not matter, because this man, Pierre Poilievre, is working with Donald Trump and Elon Musk. They endorse him. It's the cheapest way to annex Canada. By endorsing him, by providing him with bots and trying to spread his message and campaign around, they're going to try to get him in, because it's the cheapest way to annex Canada. And so if Pierre Poilievre comes in and he hands over Canada to the United States, our treaties aren't going to matter, because they won't exist. We will be part of the United States. Our treaties are based with the Crown.
Yeah.
And because they're based with the Crown, you can't get rid of the treaties. They're entrenched in the legislation that made Canada a country. The only way the Crown allowed Canada to become a sovereign nation is if it inherited the treaties it made with its First Nations. And so you can't get rid of the treaties unless you get rid of Canada. And that's exactly what's going to happen. So every Indigenous person, every Indigenous community, you have to talk to our leaders. You have to tell them, get our people prepared, because this man is dangerous and there is a strong possibility he can come in with a majority. So our First Nation leaders have to prepare our people for that, if it does come. So it's our responsibility as First Nation people here to be on the front line, to speak out against this man, to tell our leaders to speak out against this man, not to support him, no matter how much money he's dangling in front of us. It'll never come. It's a big BS lie. I don't want to swear on here. There's another thing I wrote down too. He wants us to pay our way. I mean, we already pay our way.
He said he wants to allow us to pay our way.
Yeah, a lot of people in Canada have this misconception that the taxpayers pay for us.
Yeah.
It doesn't. We have our own funds in trust that the government administers. So all the people out there, if you think taxpayers are paying for First Nations, get that out of your head. Also, a lot of people think that First Nations don't pay tax. I pay tax every time I step foot off the reserve.
Yeah.
I pay HST and GST. And in case they don't understand, that goes to the province and that rest goes to the federal government. So I pay taxes. The only time I don't get to pay taxes is if I stay where I belong. And it's specifically designed to keep us separated from the rest of Canada and to prevent us from being successful. So that's another lie he's saying. Pierre Poilievre wants to pay our way.
Yeah.
And then Tim Houston is already doing this in Nova Scotia. He's going ahead with mining uranium. And my people are in an uproar. Just up the road from me, there's another mine being proposed that could danger our watershed in Eskazoni. I mean, there's not a lot of people know about it, but there's actually a mine just right over the mountain that's being proposed. And everywhere in Canada, Bill C-69, that legislation Pierre Poilievre is toting around, we got to do this, we got to do this. Well, in the legislation, I've read some of it. I didn't read all of it, but the first couple pages, it's alarming. It clearly states in there that if it's a project that is profitable for the country, Indigenous rights or individual rights will be rolled over and you won't matter. You'll be removed from the area. So this goes to non-Indigenous people too. If you have a nice summer home on the lake, and if a mining company wants your land, you're shit out of luck. They will ship you out. Your individual rights will not matter under Bill C-69. Yeah.
So, okay, I've got questions. I got a couple rebuttals and comments. Okay, first thing I want to talk about, though, you did say, remember when you talked, you said how we would look at our future generations and feel badly that we took the money over protecting their futures. And I want to remind folks about, I don't know if you remember back in the 80s and 90s, there were some First Nations in Alberta that were the wealthiest First Nations in the 80s and 90s because of the oil royalties they had on the reserves. So those nations aren't a lot better off than some of the others anymore. Yeah. So I just want to bring, and it's no offense to them. I mean them no ill will or anything. This is systemic issues, right? There was a failing by the government of Canada and the company that made the wealth in not supporting the nation and managing and with their wealth. And right, we had young people getting over $100,000 on their 18th birthday from royalty payments, 150,000, some of them. So that wealth wasn't the solution to everything. And
Just to comment on that too, it's all about financial literacy too. We have
yeah,
a First Nation here about 30 minutes from us. They got a large settlement, $75,000 per person, and people were broke in 3 months.
absolutely. I saw it with day school money too.
Yeah,
And
day school, Indian day school money.
cows and plows. And then next thing you know, within the next 2, 3 weeks, you're having funerals,
Yeah.
right? When
See, the
these,
thing is, we've been poor for so long, and so when you drop $100,000 or $75,000 on somebody, because we've been so oppressed and so poor for so long, we go balls to the wall and break loose and live our lives to the fullest, which you should rightfully do so. But money doesn't last,
no,
but our land does, and
that's
our
right.
rights do. And that's something we have to keep in mind.
Okay, I wanted to make one more comment about. I am a big supporter of Bill C-69. It's something I work in a lot, and I've actually taken some legal training and stuff. Our rights are enshrined in that legislation. You are right. Landowners, you could be forced to receiving the compensation from the company if the project's in the best interest of Canadians.
Yeah.
With regards to our rights, the duty to consult is always triggered, and there is so much entrenched in this legislation for traditional knowledge and collaboration with Indigenous people. And they're actually even working on now new regulations to help to bring us in as an authority through some of this legislation. So it does still protect our constitutional and treaty rights.
But wouldn't Bill C-69, along with, let's say, I live here in Eskasoni, and there was a huge uranium deposit here. Would we be forcibly removed and relocated?
I don't think so. Not
Uh,
you. A
if if
farmer,
if
maybe.
if if they can move a non-indigenous taxpayer voter, their ideal standard of a Canadian according to their books, if they can move and uproot them, how hard is it to uproot
So
us?
they've been doing it to non-Indigenous landowners for a long time. For us, though, now it's been enshrined and also it's been challenged in the courts, and we've won, right? So there's precedents made, set that they can't no longer take these lands from us, and that is some of it's and it's actually the real natives. His nation's got a case that's before the Supreme Court of Canada, not been heard yet, but that will also protect our rights even further. And there might be an opportunity that maybe it is deemed it's in the best interest of Canada, and but there would have to be some form of compensation or land exchange or offset of what you're losing at the same value and more. Like
What?
these are, puts us in a driver's seat.
Yes and no. If he gets rid of the Supreme Court judges that are in favor,
Then, oh yeah. But he wants rid of C-69 because C-69 triggers the duty to consult and it's a legal requirement for them to talk to us. If that C-69 doesn't exist, then they can rubber stamp projects and they get their approvals without ever talking to us and compensating us for what we lose.
no, C-69 well, is going to trigger consultation, the whole process, right? Right
Mhm.
now, they can't do anything at all because it's all unceded territory. So if we pass that legislation C-69, we've essentially have a process now because it's our land, it's our territory. If we say no, it's a no. If we have that C-69, then we have consultation.
It's no.
That's my understanding, anyways.
Yeah, well, and like I did just actually like I did I'm on the. It's public knowledge. It's on the internet. I am a commissioner. I'm a roster panel member. So if a project ever goes to a hearing, I could be called as a panelist to review that project. So I'm very quite informed on that legislation, and I really like it, and I fight for that legislation. But I've seen organizations like the Canada Association of Petroleum Producers paying chiefs to come and
Yeah.
oppose that legislation. And I understand your mistrust and stuff, and but and we've yet to test it. It's only been
Yeah.
used in one good project outside of Calgary, And that project was involved with so many First Nations and Métis groups that are now even economically participating in the project. It's called the Springbank Dry Reservoir. If you want to have a look at that, I can.
Is Bill C-69 proposed or passed?
It's passed. It's legislation.
Passed legislation now?
Polyev wants to scrap it, but
See, my brother wants to run for a second term. He said because our court case is going to be definitely settled in his second term, and he wants to honor my father's memory by being the chief when that case is settled.
that's awesome. I thought
So
I
my
heard this.
understanding is mixed up. It's other way around. We should keep Bill C-69 rather than get rid of it. So my understanding was reversed.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
you
no,
know
we gotta
what?
keep it.
I'll do a video on it too to explain it better, perhaps.
Please do. I need
Yeah.
to get more educated. Because like I said, I only read a few pages of it and I was already annoyed.
Okay, and I'll do so. And then if there's questions, then we can chat about that too. But let's hear what Damien has to say about all of this. I'm interested in what you got to add to the conversation, Damien.
Hey, first off, I want to say that I'm coming to you live from the unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh Nations in Vancouver. Never ceded, never surrendered, no treaties. What I hear, this is the first time I've heard about Pierre Poilievre promising tax sharing, and what it sounds like to me, knowing Pierre Poilievre and opposing him over the last year and a half on this app, is that he's promising you a house that he plans to burn down for the insurance money. It's easy to promise you trillions of dollars when he doesn't plan to follow through on it, and that's what he's going to do. I don't know much about the specific Indigenous issues. What I do know is Pierre Poilievre wants to get frickin' elected, and my work on here, along with the work of countless other creators, has made him a laughing stock in the eyes of much of the world that's on TikTok in Canada. And the reason that I think he's coming to any nations and making you big promises is because he's desperate for votes.
Yeah.
They're tanking in the polls, and he's just trying to. It's kind of incredible, and I wouldn't trust that he would ever follow through on any kind of promise of money or revenue sharing, because as far as I can tell, he wants to let the U.S. roll over us, and if that happens, you don't get anything.
Yeah.
We have the luxury too of
Can
seeing what happened in the U.S., right? And I'm doing the same work too.
Remember, we take our turns. Sorry, everyone.
Sorry.
In our way, please. Kate, you can go in real native, and then if Damien's done, then it'll be ZB's turn.
I just wanted to say, Canadian guy, either jump on the panel or shut up and get out of here.
Oh, okay. If you want to come up, Canadian guy, we can chat with you up here.
If you dare.
Yeah, come on up, buddy. I don't even know what's going on in the comments. But I think, Calvin, you were alluding to the IDU. Is that the organization you were talking? So I agree with you on that 100%. And Mr. Harper's behind a lot of it. And him and Danielle Smith are like this because he's running the Alberta Investment Management Corporation in Alberta. He's the CEO of that now too, as well as the IDU. So I'm pretty confident that Mr. Poilievre is just going to hand over our resources. He's going to get rid of the legislation that triggers the duty to consult, and he's going to try to abolish treaties by befriending the Americans. And who cares about us? Again, let's just push down all of our Indigenous people and get after those resources.
Exactly.
That's how I see it too. So, okay, just hang on. If you one comment, and then we'll let Damien finish, and if he's done, we'll pass it to ZB. Go ahead, Calvin.
The reason why they want us is because the American dollar isn't backed by anything anymore. They've outspent their GDP, so the American dollar is basically worthless. It used to be based on reputation, and the world market was based on the American dollar. Now, because of that BRICS or BR, I don't know what it is, they're using an alternative currency. The U.S. is essentially broke. It was projected to fall economically by 2030. It's now projected 2027. And this is exactly why they want our resources.
Wow, that's alarming. Okay, well, get back to that, though. I don't want to lose sight of that. Damien, were you finished, or did you want to add another
the one thing I forgot, one little thing, is that if you do like the idea of getting money, I would trust Mark Carney a lot more than Pierre Poilievre. So I'd go in that direction personally.
Yeah, and thank you so much for your voice and for pointing out the flaws of Mr. Polyev, because it's not that hard, I know, but it's good when we showcase it. Okay, ZB, welcome.
Hello. Okay. I wanted to touch base on what you said earlier, and this goes hand in hand with the fiduciary responsibility that the government has for us. And there's a lot of talk about restoration, like of, for example, child welfare offices back to us. What that does, though, is that removes any future liability that they've had that contributes to our representation in the child welfare ministry, right? And that's my concern with that, is by saying you want to resource share in the tax breaks that Pierre's promising, which we all know that he has no intention of fulfilling, but that's my opinion, is that it's just going to remove it so that we don't have the ability to sue the government for the neglect that they've put us through for the past 100 and some odd years. I'm going to say 100 and some, because we all know that Canada is only 100 and I think we're at 150 some odd years.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm going to address the comments really quickly because they've been going off. First of all, Indigenous communities need money because we are the ones that get underfunded, but yet we are overrepresented in every systemic issue out there. That's why we need money. That's why it always comes down to settlements and payouts, because we've always been screwed over by the government and the constant taking of our lands. And I got to touch on a point that Calvin made earlier about the water. Do you know that poison water actually leads to, it is a cause of criminal deviant behavior? It is part of the contributing reason why we have, in psychology, they talked about this, it is a contributing factor to the criminal behavior that we see.
I believe that. Yeah, ZB, I love what you said about that it removes them from the future liabilities. And it reminds me, when I got into the hotel room tonight, I just turned on APTN and there was a story about Grassy Narrows and what happened to them. And they were given a settlement that wasn't adequate, and they stopped paying. One guy, he was supposed to be getting a payment every month for the contaminants that he was exposed to from this mercury poisoning. And he ended up getting another payment, I think, is his day school or residential school money, and they stopped giving him that payment for the contamination. And this is exactly what they try to do. Oh, well, we'll take, we're not going to pay that anymore, and we're no longer liable for that because you guys have signed off on it. Now they're finding that there's still impacts associated with that mercury in the next generations that's been passed down. And now they signed on an agreement that got rid, indemnifies them of any future liabilities. And that is 100% a real concern that we need to be very aware of. And I sometimes wonder who the hell these lawyers are that are representing our people.
Well, I also need to touch on something too that ties into what you're saying. Now, there's not a lot of research based on epigenetics. I know, because this is one of the things that I try to research all the time when it comes to psychology. And it's the study of epigenetics, for those that don't know, epigenetics states that if your grandparent, for example, was scared of spiders, that might be something that you were also scared of. It's a genetic mutation that alters your genetics. I'm trying to dumb that down as much as I can without getting too technical. And in that, because there's not a lot of research on epigenetics and the actual harm that it does, that is what we need to be thinking about with these settlements and what our leadership needs to be thinking about, because of the fact that we still don't know of the genetic harms that these things are doing to us and our people, is something that we always need to keep in mind when we are taking these settlements, because it's not just limited to just us. realistically, we should be moving away from, and I know that this sounds made up and delusional, but we should be moving back to a way where we are self-sustaining.
Right.
As of the fact that we all know history has proven that they have no intention of actually making it so that we can thrive with them on the same level.
That's right.
Because when we do that, that, like, us being so self-sufficient and reliant on our own things makes it so that they can't easily take the land from us.
Wow, that's pretty. That's amazing.
Can I comment on hers?
Yeah, go comment, and then we can all have a comment back, and then it'll be Real Native's turn, and then Smarshy, you're after him, okay?
Yeah, I totally agree with her because there's I don't know too much about that, but you can add language in collective agreements. I've negotiated collective agreements in my past before. You can add some language in there that leaves the door open based on new research that comes up that would be part of the settlement. And you can add it in the language and say, okay, you settled for this much based on this information. But if new information comes out, you automatically have to settle that too.
That's a good, thank you for that. That's a really good tip. I'm going to write that down and share it with friends. Thank you. And I have other tips too for negotiating agreements and stuff too that we can always share at other times. Mine's always about usually around land and protecting land while trying to get to resources, but it's a whole other conversation. ZB,
Wait, I have a little bit more things to add.
Okay, go.
Because of the fact that I forgot that I meant to bring this up earlier. So when it comes to land and how we get to quote unquote keep our land, yeah, we know. It's the Delgamoot case. The Delgamoot case sets precedent, but in order to have the Delgamoot case actually apply to your lands, you have to sign and accept treaty. Now, this is where we get into the nitty gritty things because there was somebody going off about the money in the comments, which is what I keep trying to go back to. Now, when we go into that, the numbered treaties are different than modern day treaties, and the numbered treaties are the ones that say that we surrendered the land, which we never did. They wrote that. And then number two, when it comes to modern day treaties, they are now making sure to write it in that we are to share the land, and it is about sharing with modern day treaties. I needed to add that in there so people have more context.
However, the modern day treaties also have in there a couple of clauses where eventually our rights, little by little, as they see fit, they get to take them away.
In the modern ones or the older ones?
Yeah, in the modern day treaties. If you read the whole thing, it says in there that as they see fit, the rights as they see fit.
Interesting. I haven't seen any of them.
The modern day treaties are a bad deal. Those are at the end for our treaty rights.
When did they share the land with us?
Exactly right.
Just listening to the language there, sharing. Sharing implies co-ownership, and that degrades our standpoint, our rights over the land as unceded territory. Once you add that language, sharing, in a legal document, you now demonstrate co-ownership.
However, we did
your sovereignty.
That's dangerous. Yeah,
however, we did specify sharing as to the depth of a plow. We were very specific about that, though.
In Treaty 6.
Yeah. Well, in a couple of the treaties, I think it's 4, 6, and 9. They all agreed to share, and it's very specific to the depth of a plow. These mines that are gone up, they're not supposed. That breaks the treaty. They're not supposed to be doing that.
Yeah.
So, the elders have told them over and over again. You guys were told to the depth of a plow, and it's constantly goes back to that. We also have these what are called standalone treaties. which do not encompass the numbered treaties. Treaties that were made before the numbered treaties. These treaties go back between 1750 and 1860 and 1870. There's standalone treaties with the Crown. There's a friend historian of mine. She's been digging these up one by one. She found one from 1872 and for my reserve. She's also finding forced land surrenders for different reserves that happened back in the after the treaties were signed. The numbered treaties were signed. A lot of times they tried to get these reserves under and I it's the sorry, some of these numbered treaties were made with the Métis. They tried to include the Métis in these numbered treaties, and that was a way for them to go back and disenfranchise these reserves and then take the land after they had signed the treaties. It was just a land grab.
Yeah.
And it's, and it sounds like it's happening all over again. They're trying to use this wording. For instance, my reserve where we has anyone heard of that Dennis Roth?
Dennis
That lawyer?
Roth? Oh
The lawyer?
yeah. That one that's
Yeah.
talking that the 51st state? No.
Yeah, he was our lawyer in the very, very beginning.
Jeff.
And then
Isn't it
my
Jeffrey?
my brother fired them, and they kept trying to put this wording in there where we would give up all our future rights to litigation now and forevermore. And my brother was like, no, we have a litigation in the courts right now. It's so close to ending. You're not doing this to us now.
And he was supposed to be representing your nation?
He was.
Isn't that Jeff Rath? Isn't that his name?
Jeff, or his last name was Rath or Roth or something
Rath.
like
Yeah, he's
the guy
with the cowboy hat, and he's saying that we should be the 51st state.
that's the dude.
Yeah, I remember him when I worked at Indian Affairs. He was a shady lawyer all the time. But we better be careful, I suppose, what we say on TikTok.
He's allegedly.
That's your opinion.
Allegedly,
and
yes.
He can't. That's your opinion. He can't do nothing.
Yeah, that's your right of freedom of expression, my dear.
Yeah, like allegedly he's got several lawsuits from First Nations against him. He's supposed to be an Indigenous activist, and I'm using air quotes.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was trying to include that wording that where we would give up our right to litigation in the future on any other thing. We would forever release the government from any litigation in the future.
See, and I do a lot of training for First Nations, right? And some of it is negotiating agreements as well. Mm-hmm. And something I always remind our people, lawyers we don't work for them. They work for us. And we have to remind them all the time of what their job is. And they should be teaching us everything that they're, like every agreement, explain it to us word by word by word, and answer everything honestly. And if you don't feel good with that lawyer, then get another one. And, because they should be doing their best by us. And there are some really great lawyers. There really are. There's some who really care about the history, and they understand it, and they want to see things go well for us. But there's some who are just like ambulance chasers, basically. They follow us around, going from resource project to the next, trying to help us negotiate agreements and stuff. But I just want to let you know what I pulled up on the internet about treaties. So it says the first one started in 1701, actually. Yeah. But while I was quickly glancing at this page, something struck me, because it just says one of the headlines is, what are treaties with Indigenous peoples? And it says, Treaties are agreements made between the government of Canada,
Oh,
Indigenous groups, and provinces. That makes us sound like groups, like we're not
yeah,
sovereign, right? Like we're not
yeah,
at the same
exactly.
level as Canada.
Yeah,
The first
and
time I
that's
read this bugs me.
and that's a misinformation they're putting out there. We did not sign with Canada. We signed with the Queen at the time, Queen Victoria. Um, so our documents are a living, breathing international document between us and England. Canada is just the go-between. This is the kind of misinformation that's constantly being, and that's why YT people think that their taxes are paying for our reserves. It's because of misinformation like this. You know, oh, there's another comment. Why does my taxes go towards your people's GST check?
It
I just
doesn't.
explained it. I
It
explained it
doesn't.
earlier. Whoever your comment is, go
Joke's
scroll
on
up.
you. Joke's on
We're
you,
not
buddy.
using your money,
Realistically,
and I
Okay, I
pay
gotta ask
taxes.
a question to this person in the comments real quick.
Okay, Smushy,
Um,
go ahead.
why is it that you guys think that your taxes pay us when the First Nations bank account was used to fund the CN Railway? It
Right?
was used to fund all the surplus tax that you guys have been getting over the years. And everything else that has been funded has been taken from the First Nations account. I do have a video. If you want to go check my video, go ahead. But you're not going to spread this misinformation on this platform because we are knowing what is going on. You guys are just fed false information and you run with it till it's like sticking, it's like cooking spaghetti noodles and throwing a spaghetti noodle and hoping it sticks. It's not going to stick, my dude. It's just not.
Yeah, and I always like to remind them that how do you
As for the
like,
railway, you talk.
they have a lifestyle that they live on stolen lands and resources that
Yeah.
exceeds our lifestyle, which should never be. So I always try to remind them of that too, that even if you don't work in the natural resource sector in this
Oh
country,
my.
everything is
Did
connected. That whole
you guys
economy
see
is
this?
connected.
Did
So
you see this comment? We wouldn't have survived the
You
winter
survived
if it wasn't
winter
for coal.
or no
Oh
heating.
my God.
You are the okay, my dude.
You're
You
the
are
reason
the
we
you okay.
survived
But
the
hold,
first winter.
let okay. The thing is, when you guys came here, who was it that helped you guys out? It was the indigenous.
yeah.
We showed you kindness. We showed you compassion. But all you did was give us disease blankets. We taught you how to hunt, fish, everything else like that. You know what? You should be thanking us, not putting us down like the rest of them. Thank you.
And
Sometimes
if
I
you guys
wish
want to
to.
talk smack, why don't you come up in the panel?
Yeah,
And you can get
because
schooled by the rest of us.
right?
So,
Because this is one thing I'm tired. Oh, if it wasn't for us, if it wasn't for us, you seem to think
Exactly.
that you seem to not realize that if it wasn't for us, you wouldn't have survived anything. You wouldn't know how to do the things you do. You wouldn't have the land you have if it wasn't for you.
It's not full. There's room to come up.
well, you know what? Let's think about this for a second. These people were never taught that we were thriving, prosperous,
Yes.
structured
Can I
societies.
can
They
I
didn't
give
know
them a
that.
little history lesson?
Sure, let's please go ahead.
And if you don't, you can go to my TikTok. I have made videos on it. Okay, those people that are wondering about taxes and why this is unceded territory, here it is. So the person that made the comment there, just listen. So why Canada is unceded territory? It was never conquered by Europeans or any other race. First Nations always beat the French or the English in wars. And it's because of your weaponry. 17th century weapons, you can load one musket ball for every 30 seconds, where a First Nation can fire at least a minimum of 6 arrows in the span of 3-4 seconds. So, with firepower alone, your people were toast. My people did not engage in traditional warfare, such as Europeans. We didn't line up and get ready to be fired upon. We practiced guerrilla warfare, where we would attack and retreat, wearing our enemies down. And that's exactly the same tactic National Security of Defense of Canada is talking about now, if Canada is ever tried to annex forcibly by the United States. So they're
Yes.
taking lessons from First Nations. Third, people might say that, oh, we had the Spanish galleons or the big warships. Well, the big warships were just a big, giant target for First Nations to pick off. Because when you look at uh, a merchant ship that was converted to a warship, it's basically has cannons mounted on it. And those cannons have a range of 300 yards, but it only has 30-degree turns. So our people would encircle the Spanish ships or the merchant warships, and we would just stay out of the 30-degree range, and we would fire our arrows, set the ship on fire. Now you'd say, yeah, well, we had muskets. We would fire muskets on the ship. The musket only has a effective range of 25 yards, where a bow and arrow has an effective range of at least 100 yards. So we were just staying away from your bullets. So we had greater firepower, greater range, greater accuracy, more in numbers. So this is why the British government, the Crown, changed this tactic from trying to take over us to signing treaties of peace and friendship. And that's how the treaties of peace and friendship came to be. They were tired of getting their ass kicked and killed. So that's your history lesson. Taxes, we pay taxes. As soon as we step off the reserve, we pay taxes.
I
Taxpayers don't pay us taxes. You use our money that's in trust. And yeah, so there you go.
What little we get from we get like 2 to 5% from the resources that are taken out of Canada, but that's 2 to 5% out of how many trillions of dollars, when it should really be more like 35%. You know,
can,
um,
can I?
it's our
Oh,
land,
go
and
ahead.
we're getting minuscule amounts from what's being pulled out. And at the same time, our culture and our way of life is being stepped on without any consultation with us. I laughed my head off when I saw that they had found that village in Sturgeon Lake where what's his name, Cleary was supposed to build his AI data center, and now that's a dead project. You know, because they found that village.
That was Sturgeon Lake, Saskatchewan,
Right.
not
That's where
Sturgeon
he
Lake, Alberta.
built.
Can I
Oh, the
address
two
a
Sturgeon
comment?
Lakes? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I was putting
Well,
Um,
see, we learn something new every day. Okay, Smarshy, it's your turn, sweetie.
answer a comment, please, and thank you?
Sure.
Why can't we just get along and be Canadian? 100 years ago, going here, reparations won't fix. No, my dude, it's not in the past. If it was in the past, we wouldn't still today have the MMIW G2S movement. We wouldn't need the Every Child Matters movement. We wouldn't need reparations if y'all would just leave us the fuck alone. Let us live on our land. Let us do what we need to do to fix the climate change that continues to happen day in and day out. I'm so tired of, oh, it's in the past. It's in the past. It's not in the past when our women, our children, and our men go missing. That's not in the past. It's 2025, and we still have Indigenous people all over Turtle Island going missing at every turn that you think. But you guys want peace. You guys want to get along. Get along. Help us be people.
Um,
Let us
Yeah.
be
can
people.
I add something to that?
Sure thing.
Um,
Yeah, and I'd like to add too. Go ahead, Calvin. I'll go after you.
reparation. This person that made the comment. Reparations are part of the healing process. It is to recognize what has happened and accept what has happened, so we can all move forward together, both First Nations and non-First Nations. We all treaty people. Treaty people. We are all treaty people because non-Indigenous and both Indigenous people both benefited from treaties of friendship that was made. And that's the reason why the reparations are being made. If that person that made the comment, that's their explanation.
And I'd like to add too, so when you say, why can't we just all be Canadians? Something to be mindful of is that we're sovereign nations. conquered people don't write treaties with other nations. It's nation to nation agreements is what treaties are. So there was, like Calvin said, that whole history of they realized they couldn't conquer us. So they came to that realization and accepted that they had to write a treaty with us and accept and acknowledge our right to self-determination, self-governance, and our sovereignty. But what people don't realize too is there's 634 First Nations, numerous Métis communities and their own nations with their own governance structures, and the Inuit. So we're not Canadians. We are who we belong to, what our ancestors are. We're people of Turtle Island, who, yes, live in Canada. I do identify as a Canadian. I have a Canadian passport, and but first and foremost, I'm an Indigenous person.
Yeah, and when that person says, "Why can't we all be Canadians?" It's like saying, "Why can't we all be Americans?" Because we're not Americans. We
Right.
are two different people. We
Exactly.
are a nation within a nation. You have to understand that.
Yeah.
You know,
So,
if they wanted to give us, if they say they want to give us such recognition, why is it that the only two official languages are English and French?
Oh,
that's probably part of the healing process. It will get there eventually.
And we do
Yeah.
so
have, there was a language act passed too, I believe. Let me look it up. Continue on.
In Nova
I want.
Scotia, there is some legislation passed where
Yeah.
it is in the process, or it has been passed, where Mi'kmaq is going to be a recognized language, and treaty education is mandated in Nova Scotia schools. So we've had some leaps and bounds here.
So
Okay.
oh, go ahead, Smart.
Okay. I want to say, Raven made a good point. Mercedes Myron's remains were found today, and she's finally going home to be put to rest. Let's just take a minute to think about that.
Yeah. Just do a moment for her. Thanks, Marshy. Yeah. Um, that is, I'm so grateful to Wab Canoe to have taken a stand on that issue. But
Bob Canoe for PM.
yeah. Anyways, let's circle back to Curtis and see what Curtis wants to add to the conversation.
I'm Cree from northern Alberta, Tanse.
Ooh.
Introduced myself at the beginning for those who don't know me. One of the things you were talking about treaties, yeah, a lot of things are in the treaty. Like in Treaty 8, we were promised through the oral tradition that we would be free from taxes. And that's never been lived up to. But they found in the commissioner's journals there, he was writing, he said, if I didn't convince the Indians that they'd be free from taxes, they would never sign treaty. So he wrote that in his journals and private, memoirs, and they're always trying to get out of everything. Like Real Native was saying in Treaty 6, the depth of the plow. That's the resources and the oil, and the 1935 Resource Transfer Act. It violates the treaty by the province stealing all our resources, which are worth trillions of dollars. So yeah, that's just kind of like my thoughts. And now they're talking about resource sharing, tax revenue sharing with the new governments. If they come in, they're promising these things, but these things should have always been from day one. But they've never honored and lived up to the treaties, since day one.
That's why I think that what PP is saying about, oh, he wants to incentivize, he uses the word incentivize in First Nations leaders, meaning he's going to give them the money, and or he's going to, give them a kickback in order to get them to do this or do that. That's not how that's supposed to work.
Like I said before, though, it's not going to matter if he comes in with a majority government and he transfers us to the United States. Our treaties aren't going to matter because they won't exist anymore because their treaties are with the British Crown.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. And one thing I want to say is, I have learned a lot on my reconnecting journey. I am Métis, Plains Cree, Bear Clan, and I have been learning and reading books on our people, and just reading the perspective of our people makes me want to fight that much more, and not fight like hurt people, but stand up for our people, stand up for everybody. I will always stand for human rights. And I just want to say to the person who said, I'll come back and debate you, Indigenous rights are not debatable. They're human rights. Just like everyone has the right to be treated as human. So this day going forward, I don't debate my rights. I don't debate my humanity. I never will. And I will never let anyone else debate my other brothers and sisters of our Indigenous community. Our rights are not debatable. We should have
I
rights like everybody else.
And to be fair, they had been debatable in the past, and we've had to go to court and reestablish and assert rights and make sure that they're being upheld and honored through a colonial court system that we don't have any option but to participate in. Go ahead, Calvin.
Yeah, people don't understand treaties. It's a really a lack of education. People will say, "Oh, they're old and they're not relevant anymore." Um, you can say that, and you can say that Canada doesn't exist. So a lot of you guys, there's about 22,000 people out here joined us live. So if you say that the treaties are too old and don't exist and they're not upheld, you're basically saying that Canada doesn't exist. The only reason why Canada exists is because of the treaties. That it was language stipulated that said to be a sovereign country, Canada had to adopt these treaties before they were allowed to form a country. So on Canada Day, when you celebrate Canada Day, you're celebrating our treaties. Yeah, that should be part of the celebration of Canada Day.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I had put this up yesterday, treaty. For those people that say that since when did the Indigenous have rights to the land? This was taken from the Alberta, the Canadian government website. And it clearly says we have rights, right title to the land. We have rights that are recognized by the United Nations because we have an international document. And it's to say that we don't have any right to the land, or they can annex the province or the country without our consent, is absolute utter hogwash.
Yeah. So when you conquer a society, and this is the misconception that a lot of Canadians and non-Indigenous people have, when you conquer a society and a land through war, yes, you do own the land. But First Nations were never conquered in Canada.
That's
So
right.
there's a big difference there. In South America, they were conquered, and that's why you see a lot of Indigenous people in South America still living in poverty. And this is a big stark contrast to Indigenous people living in Canada, and why we are so fierce of defending our land, because it was never surrendered. When Europeans first came here, they came in stages, and every time we welcomed them in and we helped them. This is why you are a beneficiary of the friendship treaties, because we
Yeah.
helped you survive and we helped you flourish. And today we share this great country. No, I shouldn't say share, because share means co-ownership. We live on this great piece of land together in harmony.
Yes, we do.
When people tell me that you guys are conquered people, I always ask, my first question is to them is, what war did we fight and lose?
Yeah.
And they always say the War of 1812, and I'm like, no, wrong. That was a war between the Americans and the Canadians. Try again.
Yep.
And then they'll say Riel Rebellion, and I'll be like, nope, that was a Métis uprising. Try again.
Yes, it was.
Frog Lake Massacre.
Yep.
That was part of the Métis uprising, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But that was just.
And it was never over time, like when we were still strong. I think about this, like what Calvin was saying about how fierce our people were and how better armed and the accuracy and all of that. But then they enter into friendship treaties, and then as people started moving west, they lost that respect somehow, and then decided they're going to take away our food source and shuffle us around into areas that we aren't familiar with, and separate our people and give us disease and all of that. So that is a kind of a terrorist attack, I would think, of sorts. But it wasn't a fair war because at that time we were already sick and starving, and how can we war back in a way, you know? But I don't think we were never conquered because those people still exist. We're still
Exactly.
descendants of those ancestors that fought and suffered and struggled, but we're
And
still
still
here.
do. We
You
still
Yeah, we
fight
know,
and
still
still
do.
struggle and still
you,
suffer.
you, you know,
Okay.
another thing that they will bring up a lot is they'll say, well, you guys were, unaliving yourselves for eons before we got here. And I bring up something that an elder told me that was told to him by his great grandfather from the times of warring, is that the highest honor that a warrior could achieve was something called counting coup, which is where he would sneak up to the enemy, touch them with his hand without unaliving him, and then steal his horse. And that was the highest honor you could achieve. And it had nothing to do with unaliving each other.
Yeah. I hear this a
Just
lot from people that try to be like, oh, you guys were killing each other and stealing
Hmm.
each other's wives before we got here. Like this was some kind of, again, it paints that image of savagery, right? Where we're
Hmm.
just,
That
go ahead,
just
ZB.
sorry to cut you off. Okay, that actually is a part, like a pillar. Maybe not pillar is not the right word, but that is actually a part of the G side that we have been going through since they have landed on our shores.
Yeah.
That is a way to minimize and shift blame onto us for us to quote unquote take responsibility for what's happening to us. Um, and that is like when we talk about our people and our history, I think a lot of people really don't understand how insidious it actually is and how cold and calculated everything that went down actually was. Uh, Like,
yeah.
so you have systematic racism, which takes a part of that. And that also feeds into the denial of us going through a G side because the denial of us going through the G side is actually a part of the G side itself. Like you can't
Right.
have that without the denial of it. And that's where they always come to blame us for these things.
How,
Sorry to cut you off.
however,
There is a comment there. When will Indigenous people move on, and when will they forgive whatever? So the government for the last five, I don't know, 5, 6 years, is in the process of doing that. This is the whole point of reconciliation. How do we move on? We have to accept, we have to recognize. And until every single one of you that's non Indigenous stops asking those stupid questions and actually is
Right.
educated on it, that's when we can move forward and that's when we can stop all of this.
Yeah.
When we're
Curtis,
all together
or
moving forward.
Calvin, would you say it's the uncomfortable conversations that need to be had with other YT people, with other YT people on how to fix this? Because it's not up to the oppressed people, it's up to the oppressors, in my opinion,
It's
to have that conversation.
what
But I'll add to this first thing because so much of it's truth. We have to first go through this truth journey, and they can't tell our stories for us, Marsh. But that's let's see what Calvin. What do you have to say about that?
well what
Oh, you're muted again.
has to happen and what it is what's actually happening now is first we have to spread education and awareness. Only through spreading education and awareness can we move together forward, and both non-indigenous and indigenous people. The only path forward is through education, and so the more people we educate, instead of meeting them aggressively. And when they ask questions like that, it's not, yeah, they're stupid questions, but it's sometimes they're based on they're genuinely asking that question, like, why can't you move on? So we need to explain to them why we can't move on unless there's further education, further reconciliation. We have to drop our guard because we're so used to being oppressed. Anytime that we're met with something like that, we get very aggressive. I'm like that too. But I have to remember, recenter myself and say, I'm not trying to burn bridges, but build bridges.
Yes, thank
Okay.
you.
Thank
That's
you. I
really good.
appreciate that.
And you know, I think about it's hard to just move on too because there's a lot of things that happened in our history I had no knowledge of until Truth and Reconciliation Commission report came out. And I wasn't aware of residential schools because that wasn't something that affected my family directly. But I've met people now and I know people who it has. I didn't know my dad, who is 82 now, he never heard about 60 Scoop. And he's Métis but grew up with his First Nation cousins and stuff. And one thing I say to non-Indigenous people that say, why can't you get over it? Well, you guys still have Remembrance Day. And
Yes.
and that's it's to honor what happened and remember and it's the same thing. That's all we're asking. We're not I feel like people really struggle with the guilt that comes with this.
Yeah.
And I don't believe that any of us are asking people to feel guilty about it. Let's all understand it, know where we came from, and then go to get somewhere different together.
If one thing
I.
is to be said about First Nation people, we are forgiven. We forgave
Mhm.
you a
To a
long
fault.
time ago. We've survived. We breed like rabbits. We're still here. Okay, we've forgiven you. You have to understand that moving on means both of us moving on together forward.
Yeah.
We
I
can't move
appreciate
on
that.
until it's actually acknowledged what is actually happening currently still,
Yeah.
and like in present day, like the overrepresentation of our people in the child welfare system and the criminal justice system is a direct correlation of residential schools.
Yeah.
It is not something that we can just get over tomorrow. That is like that needs to be acknowledged that is that correlation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I thank you guys for helping me understand that.
Can we invite up Small Boy Marie? I'd like to hear from one of the Kokums.
Yeah, I would too. So who wants to
I'll
jump
drop.
down
I'll drop.
so we
Can I?
can?
Oh, I was going to drop if I could make a few comments. Oh, never mind.
Yep, go ahead, make a comment while we bring Maria.
Okay, first off, to the people who are saying that the Indigenous folks also did war, I just want to say that as someone with British ancestry, I'm insulted. No one commits warfare like the British. All right. First example of biological warfare was those smallpox blankets. We invented eugenics. We've been doing this stuff for hundreds of years. We don't go around and slap people on the face and steal their horse. That's not what I would consider the hardcore kind of stuff. So to equate those, I find kind of insulting.
Yeah,
To
thank
be a
you
little
for that,
facetious for a
David.
moment.
No, but thank you for that, and welcome, small boy Marie. Nice to see you, my friend.
Well, nice to see you guys.
What do you
Uh,
have to add to the story?
I popped in earlier. You guys were on Polyev. I'm thinking, because of the world is in such turmoil, such chaos, such confusion, such calamity. We don't have anyone that's leading truth to its fullest, I guess, the manifestation, the what we need to grab onto so that we can make sense out of what's going on in this world. A lot of it is a spiritual war. And for me, we need to find a path forward where everybody actually agrees, yeah, what's happening in this world is wrong. It's not good for humanity, and it's not good for our motherland or Mother Earth for that matter. And if we can find a path forward without further destroying our motherland. Our motherland is reacting to what we're doing to her because we are so much a part of her. We are water, we are wind, we are, um, everything that makes up our motherland. That is what we are, and we're destroying, in essence, destroying ourselves by allowing things to continue the way they are. And if we don't find, there's no magic word, no magical action. We have to set a frequency that catches everybody. We all operate on frequency, and if we can catch everybody's frequency and say, well, this is not good for humanity, this is not good for life itself. We have to find a happy medium where we can actually enjoy life and blaming each other for all the shit that went down in the past, and look forward to a future that we can all build on for 7 generations and beyond, and be happy doing it, not fighting all the way to kingdom come, wherever that kingdom is. We find ourselves in such I don't know what, a mix of emotions, a mix of passions. Some people want to build, and some people want to just relax and enjoy just being. And I'm one of those ones that like my peace, but I'm also one that doesn't like what's going on. And I know how to fight. I mean, if it comes down to it, I've done it before. I know how to drive a backhoe or a caterpillar and plow the railroad that was illegally put on our motherland across our reserve. I know how to drive that. I know how to do it. And if that's what it's going to take to stop the insanity of what's going on in this world, we have to find a way forward where we don't have to resort to violence, where we don't have to resort to tearing apart railroads and highways and whatever, to make our point that this is our motherland. We all have to live here. We all have to get along, and it's, if our politicians aren't going to do it, then we need to do something collectively. And we don't have the leadership to be able to even move things collectively, because they're on the industry's payroll. They're on the government's payroll.
Can I comment on this lovely lady's teachings? I totally 100% agree with her. Why did Britain try to colonize Canada? Why did France try to colonize Canada? Why did they try to colonize? They did colonize South America, the Spanish. It's all based on capitalism. People that are not indigenous have an infection within them that is capitalism. And how do we move forward is as humanity, to save humanity? We actually have to take the viewpoint of First Nation people, and we have to take on the ideology of First Nation people throughout Canada, throughout the world, which is only take what you need, protect the land. We have a saying in Mi'kmaq, Nedugulin, which is only take what you need. And this is the mindset that needs to infect humanity as a whole. The whole reason why we're in this mess globally is because of capitalism, because they are seeing dollar signs of resources. That's why the United States wants Canada. That's why Russia wants mid-central Europe. That's why Israel wants lower the Arab countries. This is why China wants all of Asia. It's all based on dominant greed, capitalism. But if we take our indigenous ideology of only take what you need and protect the land for future generations, we need to have everyone, indigenous and non-indigenous alike, to take that concept and live it if we want a future. Because the way things are going now, you know, we don't know if we're going to be here in 2, 3 years, 5 years or something.
Yeah. Thanks,
Right.
Calvin. Okay,
Absolutely,
Z.
Calvin.
Yeah. Thank you, Calvin. ZB, go ahead.
Okay. So I forget which of my mutuals was talking about this with me, but if we need to have unity, we need to approach the nastiness that we get from Munia in a different way, because when they're coming to the table because they're angry and we're coming back at them, we're not going to get anywhere by being angry back. And we need to redirect and how we talk back to them about things, because what we really need is more people who follow the Agitchide way of being. And for those who don't know, that word in my language means our warriors who gave everything to their people. We need more people like that who uphold those values and who are in a position to be able to lead with the idea and the with the thinking of the next 7 generations, right? Because like we've been saying, we're all poor. So it's really hard to break these habits, right? And one of these decolonized lessons that I've been working on, which I mean, I can only do this as much as I do it within myself in order for me to teach it to other people, is by reclaiming my body as my own, which is its own way of being, because of the fact that that is a part of being able to lead, because it's the energy that you give out to the world. Does that make sense to people?
Yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely,
Oh,
sweetheart.
okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, I didn't want to lose anybody because it sounds weird and kooky when we go into it, which is why I said it. Like, it's one of those things that you're going to have to be able to teach in a way that doesn't alienate people and it doesn't turn them off of what you're trying to portray to people.
Yeah.
Anyway,
It's like we need to approach this hate and guilt or whatever it is that's coming at us from our non-indigenous friends and neighbors and whomever, with the love and kindness and the teachings that were given to us. And but it's hard, right? It gets hard sometimes, and we all get frustrated. And you know what this all remind me of, like talking about, I see you, Smarshy, hang on, I'll stop you, I'll finish up. Is
No,
like
you go ahead.
I feel like people that continue after this greedy capitalist lifestyle, they're not content. They can't find harmony, and they're just chasing, 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 and they think that that wealth or whatever is going to feed that and give them some contentment. And I've had money in my life at times, and I don't feel any happier than I have when I'm poor sometimes. So, you know, and that's why I think with us, it's sometimes it's easy come, easy go when we got money, because whatever I got it today, I'm ready to spend it. And Calvin, I see you, but Smarshy wanted to chime in, then we'll
Oh,
circle
yeah.
back to you. Okay, go ahead, Smarshy.
I was just gonna say I agree with the aspect of what ZB had just said, and I agree with the aspect of what you just said. We know money, we see money, but money is going, and this is the question I pose for everybody when I talk to them, and they're like, oh, there's corruption all over the place. I said, yes, there's corruption everywhere. But here's the thing you gotta understand. Money's only there until you're gone, and then someone else has control of it, right? And then it's just a whole bunch of people that have fighting over your money. And it's pointless at that point, because money is just a thing that can be replaced or just taken away at any point. That's all I wanted to say.
Thanks, Marshy. Go ahead, Calvin.
So you touched on an important point here. Okay, so we can't grasp, well, the concept of greed and capitalism. You have to understand when we think of non-Indigenous people and we talk about concepts of take only what you need, they're not familiar with that because their brains aren't wired that way. They come from Europe, where they were always fighting for resources, versus us, where our resources were abundant. So we were never fighting for resources. We were basically rich within our small little ecosystems. So the $1 million question is, how do you deprogram a mind on capitalism when all they've known is capitalism and always fighting over resources in Europe?
I think that's a really good point. But I think about this a lot too. I see you, ZB. But I think about they evolved differently at a different time, right? And at one time they lived similar lifestyle. They were hunter gatherers too, according to the archaeological and anthropological records, right? But somewhere along the line they overconsumed their resources, or either they overpopulated an area or some, and then that farming and the hierarchy. I still don't have it clear in my head as to when kingdoms and stuff started to develop, and then and there were slaves, and then that caste system, because we really never had that here on Turtle Island with our people. We were equal, and if I had something and you needed, I would share, and and vice versa. So I think about this a lot too, and I want to do some more reading, but I often don't have the time. But I want to let ZB chime in, and then we'll circle back.
Okay, you could get the book. It's called Caste, which talks about the caste system down in South America, for starters. Um, but in order to actually start to dismantle capitalism, you actually have to understand that patriarchy goes hand in hand with capitalism. In order to abolish capitalism and capitalistic thoughts, you have to also dismantle capitalism at the same time, which is part of decolonization. And when we get into that, we have to remember that it is not just money and resources that's capitalism. When we talk capitalism, we always jump to the easy out, that is resources. But you have to remember that human beings, in fact, like coming over here, are resources. That's why they can have so many kids and not care, because they just saw them as a means of labor and a way to, this is going to sound really mean, a way to have somebody take care of you when you are old and can't have somebody take care of you, right? And this goes hand in hand with women in a European sense. And this isn't picking on white women, this is going after the system, just so we're clear. And that is that women are exploited for their labor and the ability to have babies, because once you have a woman trapped with babies, she can't leave. And they have done this and over and over and over again. And this is what they intend on doing with the whole 2025 doom and gloom that they're doing in the States. For the record, I'm not saying the word because of the fact that I don't want the live to get flagged. But these are things that you have to understand. They all fit hand in hand together, which is where decolonization is such a big, broad topic, that there's so many ways that they have instinctively gone after how people think, right? Because they are the ones who went to boarding schools first. In order
Yeah.
to become YT, they sent their little kids off to these places first before they did it to our people. We were just the last ones to go through it, who are still going through it in the US.
True. Yeah, that's a really good point. Thank you, ZB. That's a lot to think about, and thanks for the book.
I have add-ons to both your comments. I'm a history buff. I love history. So throughout generations, centuries, Europe, Middle East, it's always been a war of conflict for resources. They grew up. That's part of their genetics. That's why they're like that. Versus us, we're not. But ZB touched upon something else, and it just it opened my eyes a little bit. Well, I see it already. This is there's dominance, capitalism, and the male patriarch, whatever society, right? So this is why you are seeing an attack on female and females' rights within the United States, because they're taking that capitalistic animal. It's basically a capitalistic, animalistic sense of dominance, and you own everything. And right now, we're seeing women becoming property again in the United States. The SAVE Act is already proposed, and the SAVE Act specifically is disguised, and it's saying, oh, it's to protect voters, uh, protect the voting system. Well, the SAVE Act states that if your birth certificate and if your government issue ID does not match, you don't get the vote. And guess who always takes the name of the married man? Women. So they're taking women's right to vote away. They're also taking women's choice to reproductive care also. It's all completely gone in the United States. And now they're trying to encourage women to have more babies, but they also took out all of the Social Security safety nets to allow women to do that and join the workforce. So women, unfortunately, in the United States but are becoming in the process of property again. And this is why I am so adamant about educating people on Pierre Poilievre. Pierre Poilievre is the exact same version of Donald Trump. He does not support women's right to choose with their own body. And I wouldn't be too surprised if he takes away their choice, their freedom to vote, because he has tried to pass previous legislation on voting regulations before in the past, and it hasn't gone through, thank God. But who's to stop him if he has a majority government?
Yeah.
So
Hey, Calvin.
we have to be very
Oh, sorry.
careful with him.
Thank you. And
Go ahead.
just before Curtis did have his hand up next, there was a comment I want to acknowledge. So I just caught a glimpse of it, and someone had said that wherever they are, mountains and rivers have rights too. And I've seen that happening now in South America. Even in Quebec, there's one river that's been given rights now, and I think that's something as Indigenous people we need to encourage more of. But that's a little side note. I just saw it and thought we should highlight that. ZB, are you okay to hang on for Curtis to jump in, or Damien, was that you that wanted to comment?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
just wanted to
that
say
was
that.
me.
I just want to say that when you say that the conquesting nature of is like a genetic thing, you're alleviating me of the responsibility for colonialism. Because you're saying it's like a biological fact, and if it's a biological fact, there's nothing I can do about it. So should I stop trying?
No, because that's the beauty with human consciousness. You still have a choice. It doesn't matter if you are genetically inclined to do something. It doesn't have to mean you have to do it. That's consciousness. That's
And
choice.
that's courage, and that's wisdom. Okay, let's go back to Curtis. He's been patient.
Thank you, everyone, for all your wisdom and the sharings and reminders of those teachings of our ancestors, about how the earth is our mother, the earth is sacred, and, to have those clean water and all these things of the land, and these things that we've always had and we still have in our lands. And today we face new challenges and new things to our existence as a people. We have people who want our resources. They see them as dollars, and they look at them and all they see is trillions and billions, and they don't see a tree. When they see a tree, all they see is what they can make of it, how much money they can get out of it. They look at a rock, they look at the ground, they say, oh, what can I get out of this? Oh, how much can I get out of this? Or what can I exploit? It's all, like you said, a capitalist system, but it's all resources. They want that to their benefit. But when our people traditionally looked at things, we've seen things as things had spirit. In our Cree we say achak, it's spirit. Like water is a living being. Same with a tree, and all of these things had spirit, and they were our brothers, like the animals, and we always lived in harmony with them, respected them, and had balance. And we only took what we needed. We weren't greedy, and we didn't take more than we needed and destroy the earth. We lived in harmony here. And some people think, oh, we had a utopian society, but they like to romanticize us and there's all these kind of things now, and but we do face new challenges today, like to our existence as a people, and each government or each whoever it is coming in, they all want the same thing. Whether it was what in the states we call them in Korea, we call them imstamukaman, the long knives. That's what they used to call them a long time ago. The cavalry. That's what the imstamukaman. They're the ones that had the long swords, the long knives. That's what we call them in Korea. And now the Americans, they want Canada, would become Canada. And yeah, so these are the things that we're facing today. It's all about resource extraction. So we have billions of dollars worth of oil and probably trillions and other riches, like our water is like for them it's a commodity. And yeah, so since the beginning of time we've been here and we'll still be here, but we're facing new challenges because each First Nation is different, and each one is given different opportunities for deals. And people who are in an impoverished state, like a lot of our people, when they're offered 50,000 per member, 100,000 or whatever it is, some people will vote to accept deals that might not be in their best interest, for the earth and for our environment and future generations, for our rights. So I pray for our people, that for the things that we have to face that are coming up. So that's it.
Say something. So somebody was just saying there a second ago, when you think of linear thought, and linear thought is what non-Indigenous people, that's how their brains function. It's actually a de-evolution way of thinking of how life is, and that's why we're in this mess now. First Nation thought is non-linear. It goes around in a circle. And if you have any clue how the universe works, that's how it works. Nothing in this universe, no mass, nothing. When the Big Bang happened, the exact same amount of mass we had then is the exact same amount of mass that we have now. Everything in the universe is recycled, from stars to waterways to rocks to trees to us. The sooner, even I instructed my children, if I was to ever die, to burn me. The faster I churn myself back into its basic elements, the faster I be recycled into something else. And yeah, so how do we get the rest of society to start thinking the same way Indigenous people think and drop that linear mindset? That's a good question.
I think about this all the
Can I
time.
address that?
And yes, please, I just want to acknowledge everybody in the comments. Thank you for the birthday wishes, and thanks for letting me know my mic was off. I forgot. Go ahead, Marie.
Yeah. If we believe in who we are and how Creator designed us, and have faith in that, our way of being, our ancestral way of being, there's nothing wrong with it. That's how Creator made us, and Creator doesn't make mistakes. And for the colonial being to come and move onto our motherland and try and redesign it or improve it and then they say, well, we'll reclaim it, we'll make it better than it was. That's usually what they tell us. And to me, that's it's short-sighted, very short-sighted. And us as human beings, as our thought processes are more, we say, that's our collective thought processes as human beings, and what's in our hearts, and our spirituality, our spiritual essence has carried us, and we're connected to the wind, we're connected to the water, we're connected to fire, and we're connected to our motherland in all its elements. And right now, what's happening, and I'll refer to it again: the windstorms, the tornadoes, the hurricanes, the floods, all that stuff. We are a part of that. We have made that happen as human beings because of the frequencies we're trying to help our motherland slow down this capitalist animal that we refer to. And I want to say something about that capitalist animal. One of the things that, because of the way they think, that even the treaties are written in their terms. They say are the Dominion of Canada, which is not true. I mean, the depth of the plow. Our ancestors put that in there for a reason. One, to protect our motherland, and two, to maintain peace. And those are things that aren't really emphasized when we talk to governments or industry. Those are simple concepts and simple things that can actually infiltrate the mindset of dominion. And the reciprocity that was intended in our treaty is the reciprocity of educating each other. Education, the reciprocal nature of our being as human beings, because we come from two different mindsets, two different thought processes, and those thought processes have not really come to terms with our reality as human beings. And us as human beings, when we say decolonize, if I was a colonial being and somebody said, I want to decolonize you, that's the same thing as telling one of us that we're not human. We want to dehumanize you. So we need to find another word that doesn't have that implies we want to dehumanize you. Decolonize means we want to dehumanize you. That's what I would get if I was a colonial being. So we have to find a nicer term or something like that will reflect, we really are in this canoe together.
Yeah.
And reciprocity is part of that, to share the responsibility for what we're doing to the land, because we let the colonial being get away with it this long because for some odd reason we couldn't stand up to them.
Yeah.
We could not stand up to them. And now we're in a place where we have to stand up to them. We have to stand up for our motherland.
Absolutely.
The other one is gratitude. Where is gratitude of the colonial being towards us for desecrating our motherland and for the genocide, where we have maintained peace despite the atrocities we've suffered?
Mm-hmm.
So I'll end that there. I just wanted to bring that forward as something to ponder and something for us to maybe share with as many as we can about what we actually really need to do as human beings. We have to believe in ourselves as human beings that our motherland is telling us, and we're telling our motherland, because we are part of we are water, we are wind, we are fire, and we are elements of our motherland. And we're working with her, with the frequencies that are out there.
Oh, thank you, Elder Marie. You always give us such good things to think about.
I learned so much while she's here.
Me too. And so I just want everybody, it is 9:45 where I'm at, and I have early meetings. So I want to start working towards wrapping up, and we can just do some closing remarks. I'll give everybody a few minutes, take which time you need. We can go as late as 10 o'clock my time, so another 15 minutes, and then I'm going to try to wrap it up. So let's turn it over to Curtis if you want to add some more.
Like, we started off with Polyev and the resource revenue sharing. I know some First Nations would benefit from that, and some First Nations will vote Conservative, and are our brothers. And we're all of different political views. Some of you are don't vote at all. Some of you are Liberal. Some of you are NDP. But at the same day, at the end of the day, we must remember that we always must do what's in the best interest of our people. And whatever deal comes along, or whatever opportunities, whatever First Nation decides what they want to do to better their own people, we can't vilify them and say, well, you've sold out or you've, whatever, because I made that decision for what situation they are, because we are facing, different things all the time, and everyone does the things out of their own benefit. So I kind of see that as myself. Like I see, I see that, and I hear all points of view, and yeah, so I'll always vote in favor of the best for my own nation and my own people, whatever would benefit them. And I always want to make sure that we always protect the earth at the same time. Like, the environment is safe, and because, that's how I view things, always in the best interest of my people.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's all I got to say.
Can't disagree with that at all. And that's what we're talking about with self-determination and the right to self-governance, is each nation on their own determines what their path forward is and how the best path for their people in line with their goals and aspirations and their culture and their vision for their futures. And so I think that's fair that we should honor each other when we make those decisions, because government has worked hard to divide us and make us fight each other. So if just because we may not agree with one group or one First Nations way to go, that doesn't mean we shouldn't honor and respect it. So I agree with you, Curtis, on that. And I think it's each nation has unique circumstances to consider. Thank you so much, Curtis. Go ahead, Calvin.
Before I do my conclusion tonight, I just want to touch up on this lovely lady here. She said a lot of things that made sense to me. We are maybe 3-4 degrees over, 3 or 4 degrees to the point of no return on climate change. And she was absolutely bang on. Mother Earth or Turtle Island, however you identify it, is mad at us and is increasing her wrath with every year. And all of the Republicans and the conservatives, deniers, they think it doesn't exist, or they want you to believe it doesn't exist. They know it exists. But because of capitalism, it's a business opportunity every time a natural disaster strikes. So what happens is when there's a natural disaster, and the more natural disasters that are more frequent, it's a more of a business opportunity for them to swoop in, rebuild. So all the resources of that area and income goes to them. So it's a business opportunity. It's quite sickening, actually. For me, to close, Pierre Poilievre is not to be trusted. For me, it's a matter of sovereignty and protecting our treaties and protecting our treaties' survival. For my children, for your children, for my grandchildren, and future generations. So I am dead set against this man. And I am doing everything in my power to educate people, and I'm hoping all First Nation people will join me in protecting our land, protecting our sovereignty, protecting our women, protecting our children and future generations from this man. So I know some areas, they're NDP, some areas are Green Party. If we don't vote smart, sometimes you might live in an area that you might be throwing your vote by voting for your team and voting Liberal, and the Conservative is going to come in. So it's important to go to smartvoting.ca, know your riding, because you might be voting for a Liberal when an NDP candidate had a better chance of coming in. So even though we want to vote Liberal, we have to vote smart and know your riding. And just go to that website, and that'll help you find out, But Pierre Poilievre, I wouldn't trust him as far as I can throw him. And he's a politician, and I don't trust politicians at all. That's my standpoint anyways.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for joining us. And rightfully so, we don't trust politicians. When have they done right by us? Not many have. Calvin, there's another thing I wanted to share with you about. You were talked about how we're slipping into that dark zone of climate change. There's another concept that scientists have called the planetary boundaries. Look it up if you want. Warning, trigger. It's a serious warning to anybody that's listening. There's 9 planetary boundaries, and as of 2024, the framework has indicates that 6 of the 9 boundaries are now substantially breached, and our planet is heading towards ecosystem failure. So, and I don't want to be an alarmist, but I think awareness is really important and helps us understand why it's important that we think about our behaviors, which is what carbon tax was meant to do. And I know it turned out controversial and stuff, but so we need to find new ways to think about how our behavior as individuals is adding to the big system. But I'll park that there. Thanks again, Calvin, for joining us. You're welcome to come every Monday. We're here. Damien, what do you got, my friend?
I don't really know what to say except that I'm going to continue my fight. My main fight right now is against white Christian nationalism. Hopefully we can fight at different ends of this in a way, and we can make our way to the head of the beast and maybe, I don't know, chop it off or something like that. Because I think we're going to need the indigenous way of life to survive, or our planet is going to reject us, and it's rejecting us right now. The way that we live right now is kind of like a disease. It's sort of like a cancer.
Yeah.
The unchecked growth. It's like, I like to view Earth as like a living organism, and in some ways humans are acting like a cancer, and we need to cure that cancer.
Amen, friend. Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate having you up here, and everybody's welcome. So thanks again, and you're welcome to come back anytime, Damien. Go ahead, ZB.
Well, after Small Boy Marie started talking, thank you so much for speaking. I started to rethink the way that we talk about capitalism, and that is that maybe we need to actually recognize it for the spirit that it is. That it is, it's like alcohol, that spirit that comes with you, and to reframe it that way rather than that harsh way of YT people think like way of thinking is wrong, right? Because we know that capitalism does come from across the sea, right? But it is a way to encourage wholeness as we move through the world as human beings, as the human beings that we are. And that spirit of capitalism is something that inherently hinders our ability to move through the world as whole beings. And I do want to say that people should be checking out smartvoting.ca before you're writing. You need to get out there and vote because I don't know about y'all, but I've read parts of that P2025 thing. That is terrifying. I am moving far into the mountains if that comes. Like, but thank you for having me. Thank you for sharing all your wisdom with me tonight. And happy birthday.
Thank you, and
Happy
thank you.
birthday.
You always give me so much to think about too, ZB. And also, you know what? It's so good to see that our younger people are strong, confident, using your voices, accessing your education. You're out here, saying and doing what needs to be done. So thank you so much, ZB. I really, truly always appreciate seeing you up here with us. Thank you, sweetie. Elder Marie.
Yeah, that's contenista for having me. I get some observations on the political spectrum for Canada's political future, whoever they're going to put into power. I'll use my area as an example. There are 5 reserves, and we don't have our own voting right, our own riding. And I don't think any of the reserves do. They're all swallowed up by the non-Indigenous riding. And if that's one thing that someone can challenge, like in our area, if we had our own riding, we would have a representative from Musquetees.
Yeah.
Because we have the numbers. We're 30,000 plus. And our reserves are split to serve the Ponoka riding and the Wetaskiwin riding. If we had our own riding, we would have a representative sitting and we would have a WAP canoe.
Yeah.
Oh,
Absolutely. You know, I could look into that, how they do these writings, because they actually do manipulate writings. There was a young gentleman, he's an MP from Eastern Canada, and his Jaime Baptiste. And I remember I actually met him, and he was telling a story how like he was losing the night they were counting the ballots, and then once they got to the reserve and started counting the ballots, then he won. But then after he won his riding, they changed the riding boundaries, so the
Yeah.
next election he's it's now different.
Yeah.
I know
Tisk,
him very
tisk.
well.
What
He's the one
about
that taught.
JB politics?
Yeah, he's the
JB
one that
might have an idea.
Yeah, they
Okay.
did change the writing on him, and it's not looking good for him. But you know who taught me that we're all treaty people? It was him.
Oh, nice.
wow.
He's a good guy. I got to meet him at the Liberal convention in May of 2023. I was really proud to see an MP up there. Yeah. So, all right. Well, thank you, Elder Maurice. Marshy, the final word is yours, my friend.
I just want to say thank you for having me. I appreciate you and happy birthday. And yeah, like everybody said, smartvoting.ca, check out your writing. I know it's strategic, but we got to keep Polyev out if we want to save this land of ours.
Yeah.
The last thing I want to say is I will fight with my brothers and sisters in the Indigenous community to have our sovereignty stay sovereign, because if we don't, then we're hooped. And I don't want to live under a rule of a dictator. I don't want to live under Timu Trump. I don't want to live in here anymore. I want to live where we are the majority, not the minority. That's what I want to do. So
Yeah.
thank you very much for having me. I appreciate you all.
Thank you, Smarshy, for always joining in and supporting the lives. And, you know, for everybody that's out there that's Indigenous, if you don't vote, and please vote. And, you know, I know all of us on the panel mostly seem anybody but conservative. But if you are conservative and that's what your values are and that's what's in line with what your goals and aspirations are, please practice your right to vote. We all deserve a right to say what the future of Canada is going to look like, because the settler population ain't going anywhere. We're not going anywhere. And the more we get through this truth part of truth and reconciliation, reconciliation will happen. And I made this warning last week in a conference. We are being colonized once again, and this time it's happening to all of us. Not just the Indigenous people, but all of you that are out there, workers, farmers, everybody. They're coming for all of us now. It's water, it's all those critical minerals, and we're just standing in the way because we consume resources that their future generations are going to need, because there's too many people on this planet. So we have to find our solidarity and stand together and support one another.
If it came,
Absolutely.
if it came down to it, every able-bodied First Nation man will be joining the fight to protect our treaties against the United States from taking us over. And I stand by that. I
Yep.
already told my kids that.
Yeah.
And I beg you, talk to your leaders. Ask them to utilize resources such as elders in the community that still know how to hunt and fish and trap. Reteach that to the youth, because if shit hits the fan, we are going
We
to
need to
have to
know that.
live the way, exactly, we have to live the way we used to live if we're going to survive. I mean, we already breed like rabbits, so we just need the other part now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right. On that note, then, absolutely, we will stand our sacred ground. And I want to thank everybody that's joined us tonight for this conversation. Thank you, all panel members, for coming up, sharing your wisdom, your thoughts, your experience, and your knowledge with all of us. I'm Treaty 6 Birder. I'm the host of Indigenous Matters and Beaver Politics. We're here every Monday night, 6 o'clock Mountain Standard Time, 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Check us out tomorrow. Beaver Politics is hosted by Frontline Feminist. She does the news hour and then opens up the panel for a little conversation afterwards. So I wish you all well. Have a great rest. Stay safe and stay deadly. Good night,
You
everybody.
too. Bye.
Isakitan.
Love that thing. Stay deadly out there.